Welcome to The 48 Rules of Retirement. Today we examine retirement rule number 24, write it down. A good way to make extra retirement money is to sit down at your computer and knock off a bestseller like popular authors such as Stephen King and Tom Clancy. They sit in front of their computer screens, and in a few days, they amass 700 pages. You can accomplish the same thing. It's easy. If you don't want to be famous, do what I have done and use a pen name. Mine is Mark Twain. You have to pick your own. The trick is to keep alert for writing workshops conducted at your local library. That's what I did. They billed the workshop I attended on a Saturday as 7 Secrets for Writing a Bestseller. I would learn the 7 secrets and dazzle my spouse by writing a blockbuster novel in my spare time. Rich and famous, I would appear on cable TV, and the local university will grant me an honorary degree and persuade me to speak to dazzled young students at their commencement exercises. If I'm going to daydream, don't forget about movies based upon my books. I anguished over producers and stars. Do I select a rising new producer or stick with Hollywood heavyweights? My imagination revved up to George W. Bush's Code Orange level. I arrived with 27 other would-be bestsellers. I scouted the competition. They looked disarmingly ordinary. A chap named Brian Henry, who has never written a bestseller, led the workshop. It immediately aroused my suspicions. I remembered the guy who said that he could install our ceiling fan. Was he an electrician? No. Had he installed a ceiling fan before? No, but he quoted a great price that I couldn't resist. Our fan has never worked properly since. It emits funny noises, and when you pull the cord that regulates speed, it actually laughs at you. Then there was the guy who claimed that he could install flooring and another who could hang doors. I was getting anxious. Don't forget the repairman who replaced our picture window, my spouse reminded me. And then there was the asphalt fiasco and the crooked fence. The list seemed endless. Brian Henry dispelled our collective fears by mentioning a few published books whose authors he had instructed. I waited for titles such as War and Peace, The Great Gatsby, and Catcher in the Rye. He was proud of one called Bitten, the story of a female werewolf. Now, I was really concerned. Commercial fiction appeals to large numbers of readers. Examples of successful authors are Danielle Steele books written for women, Tom Clancy for men, and Stephen King who writes horror for both men and women. All we had to do was get readers to suspend their disbelief and write something to draw them in. I could hear coins jingling in my pockets. Soon I would be rich and famous. After outlining a few simple rules, Brian assigned us into groups to come up with an original story idea. I was working with Phyllis, Faith, and Jen, who will also soon be quite rich and famous. During the winter, Phyllis observed cars parked near Lake Erie and people venturing out on the frozen expanse, but, wait a minute, they didn't return. Our group seized upon the idea. I can't reveal the entire plotline here because we want you to purchase the book, but I will whet your appetite. Our story features beautiful young women who take up the demanding winter sport of ice fishing. They rent a hut on Lake Erie, and they disappear. Also involved is a Russian nuclear submarine that runs amok and contaminates the women with radiation, turning them into werewolves. Thus, we have cleverly combined the myriad commercial appeal of Danielle Steele, Tom Clancy and Stephen King in one book, to say nothing of the purchasing power of ice fishermen with tons of time to read inside their small, chilly huts. Brian asked us how the Russian nuclear sub got into Lake Erie. Okay, our story has a few holes, but it's supposed to. It's about ice fishing. And, don't forget, fiction rule number 1 is that readers must willingly suspend their disbelief. If you can't come up with anything on your own, borrow from other successful authors. For example, to write a blockbuster novel, your inspiration may be Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code. The key to writing successful thrillers like The Da Vinci Code is to fill them with wild plot twists. Every chapter ends in a cliffhanger like the Flash Gordon serials we watched as kids. You hypnotically force people to keep reading. It's a simple formula. Grisham uses it. I've written the Ponce de Leon Code. So far, it comprises only a few paragraphs. When a publisher advances me $10 million like they did with Bill Clinton for his book, I will flesh out the story more by adding paragraphs, chapters, and perhaps a prologue. A prologue contributes a lot of class to a book, much more than an epilogue because it just does. Brace yourself. Here's how it starts. A young worker cleans out a plugged drain at a municipal fountain in a public square in sunny St. Augustine, Florida. Etched on the interior marble base, He spots an inscription, hidden under a layer of debris, deposited by neglectful Canadian tourists, now removed thanks to his gas-powered vacuum hose, made in China. The inscription is in Spanish code. Because he is an illegal Mexican immigrant from Tijuana, he readily comprehends the message and is shocked. His hands shake and his large, round black eyes bulge like they are going to burst, the same as when he eats spicy tacos. Suddenly, a beautiful blonde woman in an agitated state, she is bra-less, approaches the empty fountain. She wears a tight spandex outfit, which reveals her incredibly curvaceous figure. "What do you think you are doing?" She shouts and climbs into the fountain, scooping up the remaining water in her trembling, wrinkled hands. Since it's really hot, the worker thinks nothing of this weird behavior and runs home where his aging mother, laughing in a crazed manner, sits in a wheelchair reading a Miami newspaper column written by Dave Barry. "Madre," he says, "I discovered the secret of eternal youth. It's..." But before utters another word in English or Spanish, the gorgeous, crazed woman, who has followed him from the square, pulls out a 9mm Austrian Glock pistol concealed in her spandex handbag. She fires 3 times at Pepe, the worker, spinning him around like a hot tamale and dropping him, mortally wounded, to the floor. "It's my secret," she shouts. "Mine, alone." At Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, known as the Harvard of the North, Professor Otto Bahn, chair of the water mythology department and part-time driving instructor, reads one of his favorite novels by Jules Verne as the phone rings. He picks up the receiver and listens while thumbing through a few extra pages of Verne. Yes, he says. "I can be there in a few hours. My sexy girlfriend, Kelly Cleavage, owns a Lear jet, and I know a convenient landing strip outside St. Augustine near the Omni Mall." Thus begins a whirlwind adventure that pits Professor Bahn against the demonic forces of evil, an epic struggle involving a mysterious message from a Spanish explorer who made a discovery that would forever alter the octogenarian world. Compelling, isn't it? Watch for The Ponce de Leon Code to appear soon at your favorite bookstore, in paperback, of course. Now, if you are having trouble getting started, you might like to emulate Sue Grafton, another contemporary author who writes mysteries based upon the alphabet. I is for idiot, J is for Jersey cow, K is for killer, and so on. Just pick a letter and get started. You may choose a vowel or a consonant, it's up to you. Get ready for retirement rule number 25, coming soon. Thanks for watching.